Hey, it's Dior, and this is going to be the third video in my Beginner's Guide to Parallel. And I had to re-record this just because I made a mistake in my last version of this, so bear with me here. But in this video, I want to talk about two main topics. The first being deck building, so answering things like, how many cards are going to be in a deck and how many different parallels can I have in a deck. And then second being kind of addressing concerns that some people have brought up about kind of like the overall cost of cards. Because when you look at a card like this, like it's just a standard rare and it's like $1,000. So like people are kind of concerned like, these cards are like so expensive. Like how am I going to be able to make a full deck out of them? How is this going to be scalable or like accessible to people who aren't in the crypto market, who have, thousands and thousands to spend on things like this. And I'll talk about something that's called CONTINUUM, which is the answer to all these. And this has been talked about since the beginning of the project, so it's nothing new. But there isn't much documentation on it as of right now. So I just wanted to kind of explain it because many people have kind of brought that up as a concern. So, first off, kind of talking about deck building. First off, how many cards can you have in a deck? Basic answer, 40 as of right now. 40, okay? And then next would be how many parallels can I have in a deck? That would be, you can only have one parallel as well as universal cards. So for example, he says cost of creation, it's a shroud card. You could only have shroud cards in your deck as well as if this loads, universal cards, for example, like this one. And there isn't any kind of like ratio of like how many of each you need to have or that you can't have. You could have like one shroud card and 39 universals. But you could also have a full universal deck. That's also an option in the future. So, you couldn't make something like shroud and Markolian cards or anything like that. And then next being, how many copies of each card can I have in a deck? That would be for commons, uncommons, and rares. Okay, so that's the blues, the purples, and the yellows. You're going to have 3 copies of each card. Okay, and that includes their SE counterparts. So if we look at like smuggled supplies, it's a common SE, but you can still have 3 copies of this. Okay, so the only discrepancy here comes when we talk about legendary cards. So for legendary cards, you can only have 1 copy of each. Okay, so that doesn't mean something like, I can only have 1 legendary in my entire deck, but more like, for example, Ogden cores, they have 2 legendaries as of right now, I think. One being Trade Secrets and the other being Kethrexamine. So you could have 1 copy of each of those cards in your deck. Okay, so that's kind of the idea there with how many cards of each you can have. So then moving on to, should I really be building a deck right now? And the answer to that is it really depends. And it really depends on what your kind of goals are as of right now. Do you really care about maxing out the rarity of your cards? Do you really want that kind of flex factor? Or are you really just looking to play the game and it doesn't matter, you don't really care how cool your cards look necessarily in game? So if you're in that first bunch, you want to max out rarity and stuff, then yeah, by all means, go ahead, get the cards you want right now. Because as we pile on more people, these cards will keep going up. But also, I've noticed that a lot of people will try to kind of like make like a full deck, but they don't really realize that 1 copy of each card isn't going to really be enough. As with card games like this, you need multiple copies of many cards, just so people know, if you're not really familiar with like TCGs or CCGs. But if you're someone who just really wants to play the game, and you don't really care about maxing out rarity and stuff, and you don't really want to spend much, then I'd probably hold back on buying at least the secondary market. You're always free to buy the packs and stuff because they will be cheaper, and you can kind of get a lot of value out of that in terms of cost to sell ratio. But about like a year or two from now, I'll be talking about Card Continuum in relation to this. But a year or two from now, there'll be versions of cards that are, way cheaper. We're talking, $5, like for like a card, or even less. Honestly, like you could probably see less in the future. But also this Card Continuum thing will help preserve the value of your current cards too, so that you're not too worried about buying cards right now and thinking they might lose value in the future as different versions of them come out. So like taking that as kind of like a transition here, like this Card Continuum that I talked about. So essentially, if we look at any card, we notice a couple things here. We see parallel alpha, then we see the parallels from, the name, and the edition size. So parallel alpha, kind of to explain that, all cards right now from both PD1 and PS15 are both part of the parallel alpha set, okay? Even though they're two kind of separate drops, they're both part of the alpha set, okay? So, the next cards that come out as well in PD2 will all still be part of the alpha set as well, okay? And then if you look at this edition size of 2000, okay? So for the CC1 alpha, okay, that's the current card continuum we are currently in, okay? So the first run is going to be called CC1, which is right now, okay? Rares, for example, like this, will have around 2,000 to 3,000 copies, okay? Because there are some rares that have like around 3,000, if I'm not mistaken. But that's only for CC1. So once all the alpha cards are eventually released, and that's about a total of 200 to 300 cards, we will move on to something called Card Continuum 2, okay? And in Card Continuum 2, the edition size of cards will be scaled up by a factor we don't know about yet, but it will make it so that there will be way more copies of each card, thus making them more accessible and cheaper for people to purchase, okay? So I made like a little graphic here to kind of show what I'm talking about. But, if we look at here, this is just a quick mock-up. This is just my thoughts. This isn't anything final or based off of anything that the developers have put out. And this number of 10,000 is an arbitrary number, just so you know. But essentially, for example, this is what you might be able to see in like the future run of cards, like CC2 cards. You might see like parallel alpha CC2. So, it shows clearly that this is part of CC2, not CC1. Okay. And you would also see the different edition size. And you can see from a 2,000 to 3,000, we've gone all the way up to like 10,000, for example. And in CC3, we might see something like, 50,000, let's say, okay, for, throwing out a number. But an important thing to really note here is that in-game, okay, your CC1 cards will be distinguishable from your CC2 or your CC3. For example, there might be like a special border around them, or, they might have a little bit of finesse, or like a little bit of, maybe some small effect on the card or something like that, just to kind of differentiate the fact that you have like a CC1 alpha card instead of, that's, 2,000, like only 2,000, 3,000 copies versus something that's like 50,000 copies, right? Just so, people know that, you've been here from the beginning, right? And that also applies to SE cards as well, which is why there's such a great value and such a great investment for the future, is that SE cards will also have really clear distinction on the fact that they're SE versions, and we don't know the exact details of how that'll be, but, you could probably expect some kind of small maybe animation or extra hollow effect in game that really shows that you have a special card. And, again, the purpose of this is that we create more accessibility for newer people as the community grows larger and larger, so that, you know, every person can just pick up the game for cheap, you know, $5-10, and, you know, have a bunch of cards to be able to play with and, you know, jump into the fun, because, you know, the goal for the developers is that overall Parallel should be a game where you can play casually or you can play competitively if you like. So, you know, making it accessible to anybody who wants to play. And, you know, that's really like the idea they're going for. So, yeah, that's kind of overall the idea of Card Continuum, and, you know, the purpose of it, and overall why you shouldn't really worry about both the cost of buying cards right now and also, you know, the value of your cards holding as time goes on. But also, a little thing I did want to note as well is something that the developers talked about is the possibility of something like the art of the card being slightly different. Okay. What I mean by this is, the best example I can give you is if we look at this card right here, the Recon, okay? If you look at his card, he's kind of facing the screen right now, right? You can just kind of see this angle where he's looking at us. But, you know, in, you know, Card Continuum 2, so you can see, like, as an uncommon card, he has an addition of 20,000. You know, in CC2, you might see, like, just instantly, like, 100,000, let's say, for example. But, you know, in the CC2 version of this Recon card, you might see something like, kind of like maybe a side profile of him, or just simply just a different angle of the card itself. As, you know, the cards were kind of created from the beginning to be implementable in, you know, AR and things like that. So they have like a kind of 3D factor to them. So the devs have a little bit of leeway in, you know, kind of tweaking cards to try to make them slightly different, so that you know, there's a clear distinction between your alpha CC1 cards versus the CC2. Okay, so again, further bringing again, more value and more clearness to the fact that your card is special, your card is from the beginning, kind of things like that. And I guess I could just quickly talk about the fact that, again, we are in the alpha set right now. So you see Parallel Alpha. Once after we kind of go through all the card continuums, which I think there's going to be a total of 3 as of right now, we would then probably move on to the beta version. Okay, so then it'll be Parallel Beta. And Parallel Beta, what that means is that it'll just be an entirely new set of cards. But again, that's a long ways away. Okay, so I really wouldn't worry about that. I just thought I'd quickly mention that for you. But yeah, I think that's overall all I really wanted to talk about in terms of Card Continuum. Yeah, I mean, if there's more details that come out in regards to it, you know, I might make just an updated video, you know, a quick add-on to this in the future. But, you know, as of right now, that's what we know. And I just wanted to kind of put this stuff out there because it was a concern of many who, you know, didn't really hear about it or read about it, as, again, the documentation for it isn't really that widely available as of right now. But yeah, that's all I want to say. And thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next one. Thanks.